You mentioned you started to do to work with some earlier stage startups in the last year or so. What are the main differences in working with these earlier stage companies compared to larger ones?
Yeah, so I will point out a couple of differences that work to the advantage of the startups. Obviously, everybody thinks yes, Google is this very established company now with every tool at our fingertips and everything moves like smoothly. First of all, it's not like that. And so when you're inside, yes, there's definitely culture like thriving in ambiguity, and not everything is like given to us, so like in that way it's very similar. But on the startup side, here are some of the advantages of being able to move faster. For instance, when you have like bigger teams, bigger budgets inside a big company, big tech company, then it becomes an extra hurdle to get everybody aligned. So you actually end up spending more time in meetings to convince your stakeholders, counterparts. You spend more time in decks or promoting your project ideas and so on. But in a startup environment, you could just actually, everybody's like one acting as like one big team. So it's much easier to get aligned around a common goal. And then your scope is bigger in a startup as well. So as the company gets bigger, you're kind of like a critical piece in there, like a bigger machine. And however, your focus gets like more narrower. But in startup environments, you can just actually see like the big picture more easily without a lot of need for internal communications to connect those dots. And then in a big tech company, sometimes you do get slowed down by bureaucracy too. So decision-making cycles may get longer, and so on. And then just the virtue of Google, there are certain things that you just can't do in the like at all. For instance, like you are the search engine, so when everybody else is like doing search engine optimization, you can't do SEO for your own product and so on. So there are definitely like absolutely no channels that are actually really working well in the industry that Google shouldn't be touching. So there's all these like external additional scrutiny. So basically extra discipline to shy away from some of those channels. Or another example would be, for instance, cross-selling. So I can't go to our AdWords audience, all the advertisers, and try to sell them another paid product just because you're Google, or just because you have the phone, you can't, the Pixel phone, you can't actually do that. So yeah, we were like really careful about those strategies. So we missed out on some of those like marketing channels as an opportunity for us. And but then in the startups these days, some of the challenges is like depending on their stage, like when they're small and when they don't have all the traffic, like as a growth marketer leader, like you kind of like walk in and you want to run experiments, but it's just like A/B split testing because like the traffic size isn't big enough, the volume isn't big enough to like do multivariate tests the way we used to do. And so there's that disadvantage. And sometimes again, we were able to invest in like multiple pilots and see what sticks. But in a startup environment, sequencing becomes so important. You can't launch everything at once and kind of like start optimizing them. You have to know what exactly is the first channel you have to start with, and then adding the next one and next one. Yeah, so I remembered once again that's the importance of like sequencing and prioritization when you have only limited resources, a couple of people on the team, and like maybe limited budget to just run one channel well.
Yeah. I have a quick follow-up. So, there are a lot of folks who are thinking about transitioning from a bigger company to a smaller startup. Some of them are more successful than others. Like having done that yourself, what are some career advice you have, or for those folks who are making those transition from a very well-resourced bigger tech giants to smaller companies?
Well, I'd like to say they have to be. I mean, I'd like to say, I'd like to hope that they have had some entrepreneurial spirit inside them. They're not just making the career transition because they're not happy with their current job, but like they have to feel like giddy about the startup environment. So you have to have the passion, and then you have to be with that passion brings the energy behind it. So you have to like not shy away from rolling up the sleeves and doing multiple roles in a startup environment as well. And so you shouldn't just like stick to your job description. You should know like in a month, like everything will be very different in a startup environment. And that's definitely the iterations are definitely like things I'm like observing through my relationship with these like new startups. And yes, and then to be honest, this is not just for people who are making that transition, but for anybody in our industry. I think this is an era where we're learning marketing from scratch. Thanks to the AI, all tools are changing, all ways of doing business are changing, all team organizations are changing. So basically, this is a moment where even as a growth leader, you really have to get your hands dirty, and like you have to be like in the tools or like in those like brainstorming sessions like from scratch with your team and so on, not just helping them go through that evolution into the AI era, but also like you as a leader, you have to know what they're how this is like shaping to stay close to the industry as well.